The only thing I do right before I leave for a wedding, and I do this every time, is I set the time and date. I base it off of my iPhone so that if I have a second shooter, they have the same time. And usually I'll get these all set up and then I'll wait until it changes over and hit OK. It's a little hard with the setup I have to show you right now. But you basically hit menu and you go to date and time, and I've got it set up on both cameras. And so you just go to the time zone and the date and you just make sure everything's the same. You want to make sure that you're as close as possible because it helps with editing. There's other photographers that what they do is they take a picture of the phone or the back of somebody's screen and they can sync it in Lightroom and reverse engineer it. But for me, it's a habit that I sit down and I make sure that these are as close as possible by the second of how synced my timestamp is. A lot of times if you have a second shooter or an assistant, theirs is on a totally wacky time zone. They never thought about changing it for the daylight savings, and it's like hours different. It's a pain in the butt to put everything in order, in chronological order. We have a lot less rearranging to do if you sync your cameras ahead of time, or like at the end of the night. You can do it in Lightroom, but there's not any other way I know. I'm sure there's other ways, but it's easier for me to just do it right in the camera. So that's it. That's the last thing I do. I make sure I have my empty media cards and I sync my time and date. And then I'm off to the races. All right, next up, I just want to talk about my process of getting information out of my couple before the wedding. So this is something that is just a personal preference, but I want to throw it out there as an option. What I see most photographers do is they send out these automated questionnaires of like, who do you need photos of at your wedding? And what you're going to get back if you ask that open-ended question to your couples is you're going to get a list of like all these people and you have no idea who the hell they are. So first of all, it's the bride and groom with so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. And then you literally have to sit down for like 3 hours and decipher what this means to them. Who are all these people? Like, oh my gosh, you're going to, every single time you put a call out for asking your couples to fill out a form of formals, they're literally going to send a list of like everyone they've ever met that's going to be at their wedding, okay? And then you will have a panic attack every single time. So I'm a big fan, as you know, you've been watching my videos for a while, I'm a big fan of put on your big boy pants, you're the professional. Your job is to help your clients understand expectations and understand what you really need. They don't really know. They're just listing all these people because you asked. So manage the situation. The way I do it, instead of doing this, which is a nightmare for everybody involved, and again, you have to spend 2-3 hours just trying to figure out who all these people are, the better thing is to call them, Skype with them, take them out for a beer, and talk to them about their wedding day. I personally am a very documentary photographer, and I really want to have a lot of freedom during the day to get cool stuff they don't know to ask for. If you ask them for a list, they're just going to give you literally a list, but they don't know that they also really might want a picture of like their parents dancing on the reception. Like, they're not going to think of that stuff. They're not going to think of their grandma there with their 6 kids that are over the age of 60. That's something that they won't think of to put on this list. So I fish it out of them. And I have my chicken scratch way to do it. I write down kind of the timeline of the day. And I write down the bride side and the groom side. I want to know who their parents are. Are they divorced? Are their parents coming? And who does grandma belong to? Does grandma belong to mom or does grandma belong to dad? And then how many of their kids are coming? So it's not a photo the bride or groom need to be in, but it's really important, especially with older generations. They have a lot of kids. Back in the day, there's 11 siblings, or even me, I'm one of 6 siblings, and we're never all together. So I wouldn't necessarily need like my husband to be in the photo with it. I just want a picture of me and my siblings. So then I decipher all this, I get all this out of them. I want to know if people are engaged because then I can market to them. I can schmooze with them a little bit. I like to know whether they like or don't like a stepmom or dad or a half sibling or whatever. There's always dynamics that you can flush out that they won't feel comfortable writing in an email. You can flush it out and get that information ahead of time if you ask them in person or over Skype, over a beer. If they live here, I'll just go get coffee with them or something. And then after I do all that, the day of the wedding, obviously this isn't going to be in my pocket. I do a chicken scratch version of like bride side, groom side, parents, who do they have coming, and how are they related. And I really keep it to parents, siblings, grandparents, maybe an aunt and uncle that they're really, really close to, but that I tell them, again, I manage their expectations that those photos can happen during the cocktail hour or the reception. They don't need to happen during the family formals. The family formals to me are grandparents, parents, and siblings, and bridal party. That's it. Everything else is extra. Everything else is gravy. The only other question you might ask them that they might not think about is a godparent. If they have godparents that are coming, it might be nice to get a picture with them. Some families, the parents are actually have been MIA, and an aunt and uncle raised them, or a grandmother raised them. You're going to get that information out of them, those specific details, and you'll remember it if you do it in person. You won't get it and you won't remember it if it's on a list. Quick story from my own life is that my brother got married a few years ago, and one of my siblings had a baby 4 days before the wedding. And the photographer, because she was reading off a list, even though she knew the bride's side of the family really well, so she only had to learn my brother's side, my family, she kept listing off my sister who wasn't there because she just had a baby. And if she had known that and talked to them and thought about it, it was a big deal that Grace wasn't at this wedding. It was huge. So she had 8 of us screaming at her every single time she listed off Grace's name. She's not here! And that girl never got it. And then it just caused all this like stress for us being in the photos. And that's what happens when you have a list you're reading from. You have no connection to these people. You have no connection to the dynamics. My brother and sister don't even really get along. So it was just even more of a big deal that Grace was making a big deal by not being there. So that's the kind of stuff you can get in person or over the phone or over Skype. And then you can write it out however makes sense to you. I use little smiley faces, frown faces, just little things like that so I know not to take too many pictures of somebody, or if they're really close to somebody else, then I know to go ahead and go crazy. And then the other side of the paper, I will just do a quick Cliff Notes version of the timeline. Again, really writing it is what helps me remember it. By the time I do this little card for my pocket, then I don't really need to know. But I will write little things like if there's some details they made themselves that are important that I might not notice. Just like little things. I like to have the videographer's first name and the DJ's first name and the wedding coordinator's first name, just so I can appear more professional, that I know who they are and I remember their name, that kind of stuff. And then I write how many hours we discussed that I'm working. So it's just a Cliff Notes version. It works for me. It's just an idea. I just want to put it out there that you don't have to just send them an automated list, which causes you more time and more stress and less of a connection. Honestly, like by the time I show up, because I do that last meeting, again over Skype or email, over phone or Skype or in person, then they feel like really comfortable with the wedding. The other benefit to doing it that way is that I can control the timeline better, and I can like plant expectations. You know, if they have 4,000 family photos they want and they've only scheduled 20 minutes for it, that's just a shit show. It's not going to work. And so in person, I can manage those expectations, and I can, again, get a sense of who's really important and who's really not. So just want to throw that out there, that you don't have to email them a thing, and I find it better to actually get it in person. And that's it.